So in 2019, you won the BBC reporting competition. And
Yes.
for the report, what did you do for the report for that competition?
So the report was more of an analysis on and questioning why there were so few Chinese or Oriental people in Parliament as like MPs, and in general media as well, just in general like in like the news, and just in any kind of televisual kind of view,
Yeah.
and
And
looking at it not so much as sort of whether it was race or not, but looking at it more of a cultural issue rather than a societal kind of
yeah.
barrier. I think. Yeah.
And you interviewed your parents and your grandparents for that
Yeah,
report.
I interviewed my gran from my dad's side, and then my mom and my dad. Yeah.
Yeah. Were they quite reluctant to take part or were they quite happy to?
Um, my dad was a little bit hesitant, I think, initially, but he was completely fine with it. My gran didn't really know what was going on. We kind of said, "Yeah, can we just ask you this question and record it?" And she didn't really know what was going on,
Sure.
so she kind of
Sure.
just played along. My mum
But
was
the
very upfront with it. She was fine with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I found incredibly sort of heartwarming to hear was how supportive your parents were for
Yes.
your career aspects because you want to be a journalist and a politician, or is it and or
And
situation?
or so it's like maybe I'll go into politics. Initially, I wanted to go straight into politics, but I was kind of thinking I actually quite like writing and doing like just journalism type um,
Mm.
role. So maybe I'll do that, and then maybe later down in the line, go into more deeper dive into politics. But like my
Yeah.
journalism aspect will be more focused around the political world, I think. Anyway, because it's
Yep.
just something I'm very interested in.
Yes. I think it's normally the case. Many. I wouldn't say many, but some, especially Boris Johnson. He was a sort of a slash politician journalist before, and then he became.
Yeah.
He moved up. And do you sort of have a plan as to how your career would go, like a detailed plan, or do you just have a sort of vague direction of where you want to go? So journalism
At the
and
moment, it's a
politics.
very vague kind of pathway. I think I got more of a detailed route with journalism because I think it's easier to kind of plan that one out. Whereas with, I think politics, um, there's a lot more detail to go into it. I was thinking of like joining one of the parties, like signing up, but then it cost £15. I was like, nah.
And you said you had a more detailed plan for journalism. Would you mind
Yeah.
like laying out for us?
Yeah,
What's your
so
plan?
obviously with um, the journalism competition, it kind of opened a few doors. So, like for example, I was able to get, I'm looking to maybe get like a work experience with the BBC initially before I go to uni, and then when I go to university, I'm going to do politics and philosophy, and then from there, because it works quite nicely. Because if I go, I'm aiming to get to Cardiff University, and where that's situated, it's very close to the BBC building. So I'm looking to try and like wheedle my way in that way, doing internships and anything really to just get my foot in. Because I think
Hmm.
that's the main thing with journalism. It's like you just have to just go full in with it, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not about what you say you can do. It's about showing what you can do
Yeah,
through writing and through projects of your own accord
yeah,
and showing potential editors what you're capable of. Yeah, that's
yeah,
really good. Um, you know, so you're going into trying to go to Cardiff University to do
yeah,
politics,
yeah.
but you're not doing politics for A level at the moment.
No, no.
Can you explain that sort of decision? Was it on
Um,
purpose or did it just happen
it
this
was a
way?
little. It was mostly on purpose. Yeah, because um, I've got for GCSE I did Asian history, and then I was looking to do it for A level, but you can't do A level Asian history alongside A level geography politics. So I was like, do I carry on doing something that I would enjoy, or do something completely new? Because at the time, I was considering doing Asian history at university as well.
Mhm.
So I kind of decided I'll do ancient history, and then if I don't do that at university, at least I've done it as an A level and like learnt it at a more deeper level than GCSE, and then move on to politics and philosophy later at university with kind of like a more fresh perspective.
Yeah. Because do you see any political relationships with ancient history and politics that you're going to do at university? So is there any sort of transferable knowledge that you can bring, or would you have to sort of intellectually prepare for politics as a separate thing for university?
I think there's definitely aspects you can cross over, because I think when you're looking at history, you're always going to end up looking at politics, because that's how societies are developed. They're developed around politics. So when you're looking at ancient history, when you're looking at the Greeks and how they interacted with each other, the different political systems that they ran, it very much correlates with modern times still. Like, it's almost as if nothing really changes, just it develops, but the foundations are all the same, which you see in ancient history, obviously, because it's where it all starts. So I think there's definitely things that you can take over from ancient history to politics, because it's always going to be there, I think.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that studying ancient history, you get to know the development of history and how politics changes throughout the time, and how modern politics compares to ancient politics, and you can sort of see similarities and differences? Would you agree with that?
Definitely. There's even from today, there's still similarities to like governments from ancient times, but you see the progression of how, like, you look at for example Athens and how they ran their state, and you can see how we from a modern society have taken aspects of that and then just developed upon it and made it fit us, our needs and what we desire for a society. So there's definitely similarities you can draw from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, because you're not doing politics for A-level, but what else are you trying to do to mentally prepare for the course at Cardiff University when you get in? What are you doing right now to prepare for it?
I mean, I do always keep up to date with the news, and I read a lot. So I've read some books, not loads yet, because they're quite hard to find like decent ones. But I've read like a few books. To be fair, a lot of history books tend to like have a lot of politics in it, so it kind of helps. And then even just watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts about people's views on politics I think is always quite beneficial.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's good also to sort of burst your own echo chamber as well. So break down your own echo chamber and try to actively seek things that oppose your own view. I think that's a good way to not just develop as a well-rounded journalist, but also develop yourself as a well-rounded person.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's very important, especially for a politician too. You should always see things from the other side.
Yeah,
and try to do that. What do you think? Let's take it in turns. What do you think makes a good journalist, and then what makes you think is a good politician? Let's do journalists first.
Yeah, I think with journalists, they have to take themselves out of the situation and try and be as fair with the stories that they're portraying, showing both sides, trying to be open-minded, not trying to guide. It depends on the piece. If it's just a factual news article, you don't want to guide the reader to think that take a certain position of the story. You just want to be able to just give a detailed information. Of course, if it's an opinion article, obviously you'd be able to persuade your audience to come to terms and accept your view. And I think, it's definitely from a writing perspective, a journalist has to be quite careful, I think. And then gathering knowledge, it's like they have to like gathering the information to be you know, and analyze your sources, verify them, get a varied amount, I think. Yeah.
I just want to pick up that keyword, careful.
Yeah.
Journalists have to be careful. What do you mean by careful? Can you explain
I think
that choice of word?
Because journalists in general, like when you listen to the news, you generally trust what they're saying. So when I say careful, it's almost as if you want to be mindful of what kind of perception you're trying to portray. Because say you presenting one group of people very negatively, then the wider public will most likely follow suit, and it could be damaging to certain people. And that's not the fault of the public. It's more of the journalists, because that's what they're portraying and presenting to the wider population, I think.
Yeah. So you have to have a sort of a consequential mindset, you know.
Yeah.
You're as they say, words are just as powerful as or more powerful than the sword, So
yeah, I'd say they're more powerful in a sense, because people remember words.
Yeah, and words change history, and
Yeah.
words changed the whole direction of the world, and the philosophy of the world. So definitely, words are very powerful. Does that put a lot of pressure on you to sort of be more knowledgeable and be ever so curious about things?
Yeah.
And make sure that your position is right and strong.
Yeah, it definitely makes me. Well, it definitely drives me to strive for a more open view. So even if I may disagree with someone's opinion, I still want to hear it. So then I can try and understand their perspective and see why they have that view, and put that and understand that and incorporate that into my own kind of knowledge of a certain situation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say that a world full of so many different opinions, especially opposing ones, is what makes life interesting.
Yeah.
Who would want to live in a world where everyone agrees
If
with
we've
each
got
other?
the same views,
Yeah.
it's way more interesting hearing other people's perceptions of certain
Exactly.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And politician, do many of those characteristics that you mentioned for journalists, does that transfer over to the politician, or do you think?
I think so, because again, they are very much in the public eye. So whatever they say, they have to be held accountable for, and also know what the consequences of those words can have. Not just to like the people of the country, but like for the wider world, because a politician isn't just. They're not just seen by one group of people. They're seen by the whole world. So it's maybe like a journalist, but dialed up to 11.
Yeah, I mean, journalists, they don't receive as much scrutiny from multiple editors of magazines.
Yeah.
And every word and every action picked apart by several national newspapers, international newspapers. Same again with the question of journalism, the pressure of choosing the right words. Does that pressure also worry you in some respects of being a politician?
Definitely, because it's cliche to say, but we are just human, so you always are going to end up saying something wrong. So trying to work out what those consequences can be and how extreme they are quite scary to think about. Because, like you said, it's not just one editor scrutinizing you. It's like several different national, international magazines and news stations all firing at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and don't forget them.
worrying.
And don't forget the major one, the opposition, who are trying to,
Yeah,
whose sole purpose is to try to take you down and
right
you
in
out
front
of
of your
office.
face as well. It's like
Yeah,
it is quite. I think it's a very difficult position to be in, to be at the firing end for just trying to do your job, and doing the right thing is quite difficult, because obviously as a politician, it's not just you. You have to make the decision as a collective with the rest of the party. So if you have a view that's different, or you have a plan that's different, not only are you being opposed by obviously the opposition who are supposed to oppose you, but also the people who are supposed to support you. So I can imagine it being quite stressful,
Yeah.
to put it lightly.
I can't remember which prime minister it was, but it was a story he was recounting in a memoir, and he would say that before each PMQ, Prime Minister's Questions, he would be so nervous he would throw up
Oh my
before
God.
every PMQ, because at PMQ
Yeah.
you have no idea what's going to be thrown at you.
No.
So you just have to be prepared as much as possible. And also it's televised, so I can't
You can't slip
imagine.
up. Yeah.
You can't slip up. I mean, so flexible and agile in your
Yeah.
rhetoric and argument.
Yes. Yes.
I just cannot imagine myself dealing with that sort of
Yeah.
pressure. I mean, it's. Are you sort of. You said you planned journalism in a very detailed way.
Yeah.
More detailed relatively to the politics
Yeah.
career. Do you think it's a priority to sort of hone in on that skill of rhetoric
Yeah.
in politics and try to be convincing in your speech? What's your opinion on this?
Yes, definitely, because at the end of the day, speeches and talking to the mass public is a key role in that job. So you have to be good at it, and you have to be able to, obviously, like you said, to be able to think on your feet, be able to answer any sort of question, and to be able to like handle criticism at that specific time, and to deal with that and use it and still portray your argument and your position on a situation. So yeah, definitely you have to hone those skills, and that may take like years,
Yes.
because also I think
And-
it's
yeah.
experience as well. You have to be doing it as well to even get a glimpse of what you have to do.
Yeah, I can't imagine there'll ever be a time where you just sort of get used to it and immune to the pressure. I don't think this.
Yeah, no.
Personally speaking, I don't think that's possible.
No.
You're always going to be terrified.
No, I get scared when I'm hanging out. I get a bit anxious when I'm just hanging out with a group of friends. Like, I know these
Yeah.
people, but because it's a group, you're just like a little bit anxious all the time. So
Or-
to a television audience, it'd be terrifying.
Do you mean when you're with a group of friends, anxious just being around them, or anxious sort of talking to the group and sort of
Yeah,
explaining
definitely
yourself?
anxious talking to the group mostly, because I think even though I can be quite extroverted, I can be quite quiet because I'm always thinking about what to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you thought about debating societies at Cardiff University? Because I know there is one.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be something I would look into, because I do quite like debating. It is quite fun.
Yeah.
Because I think that in a sense that would also help build up skills for those types of roles. So
Yeah.
definitely.
After talking for a few minutes, and sort of hearing your views on the similarities and differences, I'm starting to see there's a relation between, sort of a symbiotic relationship between being a politician, a good speaker, and a good writer.
Yeah.
So my favorite journalist and writer, who's also a debater, Christopher Hitchens,
Yes.
in one interview with Brian Lamb for C-SPAN in America, he was asked a question. I can't remember what the question was, but he was asked something about writing, and he said that in order to be a good writer, a fantastic writer, a writer that holds people's attention, is to be a good speaker.
Yeah.
And he told Brian Lamb, look into his eyes, said, he asked his students, if you can speak, you can write. Can you speak? Do people listen to you when you speak? Do your friends stop what they're doing just to hear what you have to say?
Yeah.
And then when students try, they realize it's quite hard to do that, to be a good speaker, to command your audience's attention.
Mm.
So, do you think you know, that's the case. To be
I
a good
think
writer, you have to be a good speaker.
I think definitely, especially doing English at A level, you realize how um, similar your writing can be to how you speak, and also vice versa. They can be very different than with each other depending on situations, because you learn that there are different modes of language. You have writing, speaking, and blended. So obviously, writing is what you're writing, speaking is what you're speaking. Blended is like the combination of two. So you see that mostly with like text and sometimes news articles, and you kind of see how the words that you use can be very similar when it's a more formal presentation, because I think when you're when you're writing and speaking, you're trying to speak to hold a room and to hold an audience. You have to be able to intricately think of the words to say that will keep them engaged and intrigued. And if you have that skill in speaking and be able to do it on spontaneously, it just makes it so much easier when you're writing it. So you're not thinking so much like, oh, how do I make this sound interesting? Because you'll just be there, just kind of quickly going through it, because you're able to do
Yeah,
it
yeah,
spontaneously.
I agree. I agree. How does that skill come about? Is it just more experience and
I think so.
finding more occasions to do that, or does that only come from reading, and then you can sort of imitate sort of that style? What do
I
you
think
think
it's
the
just
order is?
a combination of all of them. I think from like doing English at A level, definitely like writing, because we do stuff, we have done things where like you write speeches, and that helps you kind of like think of what kind of vocabulary you should use, and what language levels and structures you should use to try and engage that audience and portray your view, not as in a short amount of time with as few lines as you want, because you want to be able to talk about several different things at the same in a certain time frame. So I think learning to write speeches is definitely somewhere to start, and then obviously is putting yourself out there and having to go at it. I think that type of stuff is something you just have to jump into, because you can't creep into it.
No.
You just have to
Yeah.
be put there, and maybe fail the first time and the second time and the third time until it starts kicking in. I think it's more of an experience and time uh, thing for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Has anyone ever judged you negatively for wanting to be a journalist or a politician?
Um, I don't think so. People have warned me about going into politics, but I think just because politics is just it's a very risky place to go into, because you're always going to get people to hate you or to dislike you, and especially being an ethnic minority and being Chinese, I can already imagine some of the things that they might say. And people have warned me about what these things that people might say, but at the end of the day, they're just people that you will never meet. So you can't let it hold you back, I think.
So who were these people? Were they friends or
Um,
strangers or
some
classmates?
of them were friends, family members sometimes. My gran, quite funnily, in that BBC reporters competition, said it's not a real job. I found that very funny. And my parents have obviously raised concerns like just more like being aware of what can happen. So there's never anything to say you shouldn't do it, but it's being a bit trying to tell me to be conscious and aware of what will happen as a result of going down that field, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I listened to the report as well, and there was a smile on my face when your grandmother said it wasn't a real job,
Yeah.
um, which is interesting. I want to just explore that. Why did you find it funny when your grandmother said that?
Um, because it just kind of just perfectly fit my whole argument that the reason you don't see Oriental people in general in any form of media is because there's this view that you have to be like proper jobs are doctors, lawyers, the classic kind of accountants even, and those kind of classic roles which are sustainable, good pay, and safe jobs, and also you have to be quite intellectual for it, which they just love. They love a smart child.
And also status as well. Status.
Yeah, definitely. And to compete with the rest of the family, say, "Oh, look, my kid's doing this."
Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you think it's your grandmother just means that? Your grandmother has that traditional mindset.
I think so. And also I think there's this kind of consensus. I think, especially with Chinese people, we stay away from politics, I think. There's this, my mum was telling me this old, I can't remember quite how it goes, but it goes something along the lines of, a bird doesn't get shot if it doesn't raise its head or fly away from a field. So it's kind of like, if you ignore it, if you don't look at it, if you don't go into that kind of thing, you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to get hurt. So it's almost a fear aspect, I think, as well. And that kind of like mentality that you don't want to put yourself out there because you don't want to face that kind of criticism and attack, I think.
Yeah. And like having been told that by your own mum, what still spurs you to try and aspire for it? What is it about politics that keeps you striving for it?
I think, for me, politics is it's the most upfront way of making positive change, I think, and I think and that's also why I do journalism, because you can make positive change somehow in some way, much easier than certain other roles, because your job is to make society better. And I think that's why I still want to do it, because at the end of the day, you want to try and make you want to leave a positive mark on the world, I think. I think that's what everybody really wants to do. Whether they decide to do it or not is like each to their own. But I definitely want to try and make an impact somehow. And that's why I still want to do something within those roles.
Yeah. Do you have a specific impact you want to make? What kind of change you want to make in the world specifically? What kind of change?
I think there's a typical ones like climate change and lowering poverty. But another one that's a bit more specific is as a person who really loves history at school, I think there should be more diversity. Change the education system where there's more diversity in what we learn. Because in history, you learn about Europe and that's about it. And then you have 1 month of Black History Month, and they would constrain African history to 1 month, which I think is wrong. And then the rest of the world's history doesn't exist. And I think that leads to a lot more problems in a society sense, because there's a lack of understanding of other people's history, and that's why you have so many issues, I think, with equality and racism, because there's no understanding of other people's cultures and history, I think.
Yeah. So diversity in sort of historical education. So let me just get this straight. So you would rather have more topics about history, sort of a wider blanket, let's just say.
Yeah, definitely. Because even with World War II, even though it's like, well, it was a whole world war, you only focus on Europe, really. And you mention the atrocities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and then Pearl Harbor, but that's only like briefly mentioned, and that's the only bit that people know of other, like what happened in Asia during the war. That's the only bit people know, but there was so much more that happened, and the aftermath of it, nobody really knows about it from my perspective, from like in the West, because you don't learn about it. So I feel like there's definitely needs to be some sort of diversity along our history.
Yeah, just to extend on that point, because I'm not sure about you, but obviously we both have heritage from Hong Kong. That's correct, right?
Yes.
I growing up, I never learned the World War II perspective from Hong Kong.
Neither did I. No.
I know nothing about it.
No. I learned more when I found out about more of my families. Like my great grandfather was a prisoner of war for the Japanese when he was fighting, and hearing that story was shocking because he somehow survived a firing squad and came back alive. But you never hear these stories from Asia, and I never really understood or even had any inkling of or knowledge of what happened over there until reasonably recently, and even now I have a very limited knowledge.
Hmm. That's so fascinating. Do you know how he escaped? Did he tell you?
No, I mean I never met him, but my mum told me about it because her grandmother told her, and all they know is that he was lined up. They took the shots and somehow the bullets missed him, but he watched all his friends just die, and then they just let him go, and then he was released, and he was obviously never the same. And I don't think he lived much longer after that. Maybe a few more years, I think, after that. And then, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy story. One that I never fully understand, but definitely something that's one to tell.
Yes. Yeah. Like you said, an experience like that will change you forever.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite. I don't even want to imagine what it was like.
For my research on you, you told me that you had interest in going to war-torn places to
Yes.
not necessarily report on military conflicts and politics, but to focus more on the social aspects and
Yeah.
the social consequences of war. Can you tell us more
Yeah.
about that? Where did this interest come from?
I mean, again, it seems everything stems from history, but like when you learn about history, you learn about, well, the war and battles that happened, and obviously you hear about how people were affected, but it's only in the aspect of, oh, this battle happened and this many innocent people died, but you never heard individual stories. And even in the news you get glimpses here and there, but you never really hear the experiences of the people that don't even want war, or they're not even trying to fight, they just want to live and survive, and hearing their stories, because I can never imagine what it would be like to live in a place that every day you're thinking, are you going to make it? And hearing how they survive, and how they carry on, because it's such a dark time to be in. It's amazing to see how these people carry on trying to look after their families and making a living somehow. And also the stories that you hear, I want to make more stories about migrants, because you always hear, oh yeah, this many migrants are coming over the borders, but you never hear the individual stories of why, and how they do it and what the journey was like. Because I heard a couple stories from some of my mum's friends. They were from Vietnam, and they were refugees, and they were quite young, so they don't remember a lot of it, but they do remember bits, and it seems like a terrible time. And I feel like people should hear those stories more often.
That's right. I mean, especially the British reporting on migrants is they sort of omit the backstory, the context of why these people are leaving in the first place.
Dehumanize them and just see them as, oh, they're coming over here and they're not supposed to. Where instead of, these people are coming here in desperation. They don't want to be here. They have to find somewhere else. It's like they're forced into it. It's not of their own free will a lot of the time.
Exactly. And I also think, the inverse, if a war broke out here, you would expect a lot of people to flee this place.
Yeah.
Not because they want to, but because they have to.
It's natural, because it's fight or flight. You either stay and risk death, or you leave for a more secure life. Especially if you have young children, it's like, what other option do you have apart from finding some way to somewhere safer? which happens to be here in lots of Europe and America and other places like that.
Yeah. Because I also, I haven't really thought that far, but I've also had interest in reporters who report on war-torn areas, both politics and social. And I put the hypothetical question to my parents, what would you do if I went to these places? And just their look alone was enough to tell me that they didn't want me to go.
Yeah.
Didn't have to say anything, just gave me a look to say, do you have to, really?
Yeah.
And I kind of guess it's obviously because they don't want their son
to be in danger.
In danger, to risk their lives reporting the story. Have you told your parents about this interest?
I've brought it up. I can't quite remember their response, but I think my mom's like going, "Really? You sure about that?"
Are you sure? Just make sure.
Yeah. But I feel like as long as I'm safe, I think they'd be okay with it. I think.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of precautions to go in to ensure the safety, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah. I think that's safety is definitely a priority.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's definitely. So, okay, I just want to move on to the cultural identity, and speaking of conflict, have you ever had an identity conflict? You're internally debating whether you're Chinese, you're British, or you're British-born Chinese, and how that affects you personally. Have you had that?
Definitely. I think if I look back, I think I've always kind of had it, but it's always in the back of my mind. And it's only now that it's like I've really decided to take a real deep look at it. Because I feel like during most of my school time, because even from like primary school, I'm like the only Chinese kid, so I knew straight away I'm different, and I'm slightly outcasted in some way because I just look completely different. And people will say comments even from like primary school. They say comments. So I think I tried to accommodate to other people, and I feel like I almost tried to make myself more British and almost more of a white person, and trying to reject being Chinese. And it's only recently I've been like, wait, but I'm not that. I'm Chinese. I have to accept that and embrace that. Because I always just have this like joke where I go, I wouldn't wear that, I'd look too Asian, like it's the Asian fashion. And it's like, I was just completely rejecting it purely for the sake of, I think it was more of a survival tactic to get away from any kind of backlash just because of my colour of my skin. And it was kind of like, and it's only now I've really looked at it, like, that's wrong. Because not only that, people would say racist jokes, and because I'm the only Chinese kid there's no one to back me up, no one there to support me, because nobody really cared or understood the consequences behind those words. So I ended up just joining in. So it's almost like, oh yeah, you're not going to affect me. Your words don't affect me. In fact, I can joke about it too. I did that throughout all school life, and it's only now I've only literally as I hit year 13, I was like, yeah, I'm going to stop that now, because it does affect me. And you can tell because it's only like now I've started like dressing the way I want, talking the way I want, and being trying to be more myself instead of this kind of masked person, I guess, in a sense. And kind of coming to terms with that's a bit confusing, because especially amongst peers and friends, because for so long I made all these jokes and people thought it was okay, and I just suddenly flip around and say, no, it's not okay. People get a bit confused and go, wait, but you said it was fine before. It's like, yeah, but it's not fine now because I have a different perspective. And it's been a tricky road, but slowly making my way through, I think.
Yeah, that's such a good point that you made when people thought, oh, you said it was fine before, but now you're saying it's not okay. What kind of sort of flimsy attitude do you have? They don't understand that when you're growing up, you're just trying to do it to fit in. As you
Yeah,
said, it's a
it's
survival mechanism. It's a
yeah,
defense mechanism.
yeah, definitely.
Um, and they don't understand people grow, people's morals and ethics.
Mm.
They grow as they mature. Do you regret how you pushed your Chinese side away at all now?
Definitely, definitely, because now I feel like I'm more disconnected from my heritage than I should be, because now I'm in this weird limbo where I'm I'm not in a sense I'm not Chinese because I've been brought up here. I have Western views. I do have Eastern views as well, but I have a lot of Western views as well, and I've spent so much time fitting in with British people and that aspect and rejecting Chinese that I've drawn so far away that I'm not Chinese. But then to everybody else, I'm Chinese because obviously my skin color and the way I look, obviously I'm Chinese. So I'm never going to fit in with white people or the British community, and they're never really going to properly fit in with the Chinese community. So I kind of stuck in this weird middle ground where I'm like, okay, where do I fit in on this? And it's been a tricky debate in my head, for sure.
Have in your experience, have you found the place where you could fit in and be your authentic self? Have you
I
found that
think
place?
definitely. Like I do have some Chinese friends that I feel very comfortable around. And recently, like over like between year 12 and year 13, which was like my sixth form years, I found people and like more and groups of people where I can be more myself, and like work on being myself. To be fair, not being quite myself, but like working towards that with these friends that I feel like I'm more connected to than I've ever been with previous friends. I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that's a crucial part of it all, just having that group that you can grow in and have support and go to for advice and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I think a very strong support network is not only good for that development, but good for your mental health. It's always
Yeah,
because when you're constantly going against the grain in terms of culture and ethnicity, you realize that um, you internalize the thought that there's something wrong with you,
yeah,
that you're not
yeah,
that you're not normal. As I
yes.
said, you're against the grain. You don't fit in.
You're neither
You
here
don't
nor
look this.
there, so it's like,
You're neither here nor there. You feel so confused, and
yeah.
but in a way that's good because it gives you,
I
in a
think
way,
it's your
more
unique perspective as well. Like it's your
unique
very unique
perspective.
perspective. Yeah,
It does,
because it's
and
like because you can be. I've brought up in, quite traditionally. I can have very Asian and Chinese morals and ideas, but then when I go to school, I've learned lots of Western ideas and views, and you can kind of see the differences and similarities. And yeah, I think you have a wider perspective. I think, or you
yeah,
can, if you accept it.
and you can sort of hybridize,
Yeah,
Eastern and Western values to create this something new and something very
yeah,
personal.
definitely.
Um, but yeah, and I just to add on to your point, I feel like I found sort of a belonging with people who feel exactly the same thing, but not necessarily from a Chinese background, but just anyone
Yeah,
who feels a sense of disconnect with the majority
yeah,
culture,
yeah, yeah, definitely.
and people
No,
who experience this internal debate of who they are.
yeah,
Um,
which I think a lot of people do have but don't talk about. Um, so when you do find those people who are willing to talk about it, you end up just supporting each other and
yeah,
helping each other get through it. Because I know with my friend groups now, they're really into Asian culture and want to learn more. So like we do these things where we cook for each other, and like I've cooked Chinese meals for them, and it's like they learn how to use chopsticks and they try and learn all the etiquette. And it's like it helps me um, come out of my shell and be more be more Chinese and not feel so um, sheltered or putting up walls of my identity. I think.
yeah. I think when you're in that environment, you know, the people there, they're there not to attack you or you
No.
know, discriminate against you, and so you sort of let your guard down, and you feel less anxious about
Yeah.
having to, as you said, put on survival mechanisms and defense mechanisms. But
Mm.
you know, you could just be happy sharing your culture, and I think that's great.
Yeah. It's definitely something
Yeah,
that's I'm really lucky to have, I think, 'cause I don't think everybody
yeah,
gets that, but I'm grateful to have the friends that I have that are very supportive, and
yeah.
yeah, I think I'm quite lucky.
Besides cultural and ethnic sort of elements, because you're British Chinese, let's throw that aside for a second. What would you say your identity is made up of? What values and principles do you hold dear to your heart?
Um, I think I definitely hold a lot of the Chinese values quite highly because it's very family orientated. I think with Chinese people, because I find that I would like go into like some of my friends' houses. Like for example, I found it really confusing when some of my friends they never eat with their family, whereas we all eat together because the meal is like Chinese a Chinese meal is pretty much a big communal time, and it's the time when you converse and make conversation and you know be together. It's like our time to be together, so it's quite interesting, and I hold that quite highly because I feel like at the end of the day, that's why family like to say, blood is thicker than water. Like you can have friends but they come and go, but your family, they're always going to be there, no matter what. And those kind of the ethics that we have, I think, are more less in because with Western views they're very individualist. It's all about what can make me happy, what benefits me. Whereas with a lot of Asian cultures, it's more about well, what can benefit the community, what can benefit my family, my siblings, my friends, and you know the wider community again. And I feel like those kind of values I really try and uphold. But then like I understand Western views as well because you do have to take time for yourself, and you can't be there for other people if you're not taking care of yourself and doing things that benefit you. So I feel like a good
Hmm.
mix of the two works well, I think.
Yeah. So we can hope to see when you become an MP or PM, you can think about this communal, you know, bring in your Eastern values and think about the community.
Yeah, I
I look
think
forward to that.
yes, yeah, something that needs to happen. I think
Yeah,
politics have become too disconnected with society, I think.
yeah. Maybe, hopefully, you're the guy to
Maybe
bridge that gap again.
be something to strive for.
Yes, yes. Um, just a final question. Um, do you have any personal goals, however small or big, that you think is important to achieve before you die?
Um, I think as simple as it is, it's just to be content and happy with what I've done, no matter what it was. Like, um, to just feel like I've done everything I could in that time. I think that's something I definitely want to feel and feel like have a sense of achievement there. And I definitely, like I said before, one of the things I really want to do is make a positive impact on not just maybe, no matter how of a small of a scale or how big of a scale, just make some sort of positive change to either someone or a group or a community lives, I think. Um, and to just explore the world and gain perspectives from all walks of life. Because that's something I've always been fascinated by was the way people think and how they can differ. No matter how wrong or right you may think they are, it's still what they believe, and it's something to explore. I think, yeah.
Thank you very much, and I thank you for your time, and I look forward to see you grow over the next few
Yes,
years.
thanks for having me. It's been fun.
My pleasure.